the siren began before dawn. Not the air raid kind. The internal one. The signal reserved for breaches. For arrests. For disappearances that were meant to be clean and quiet. By the time the first boots struck the courtyard stones, I was already awake. I had learned early that sleep, in a collapsing war, was a liability. Germany was losing. Not in speeches. Not in orders. But in numbers. In fuel manifests. In casualty lists that grew longer even as the front lines shrank. I knew this because I had read the reports they had never meant me to see. And because I had been sent here to watch the fortress crack from the inside.
I pulled my coat tighter and stepped into the corridor. The building smelled of damp paper and coal smoke. A military headquarters pretending it was still permanent. Pretending the walls would stand after the war ended. They wouldn't. Nothing built on obedience ever did.
Colonel Matthias Keller was already awake as well. He always was. A man shaped by schedules, by salutes, by the belief that structure itself was a form of morality. He stood in the courtyard now, rigid in his grey coat, watching his men assemble with the cold precision of someone who still believed discipline could outrun defeat. He had not yet learned that wars do not care about honor. Only about time.
Seal the West Wing. No one leaves without clearance. Search every office. Every file room. If there is a leak, I want it bleeding in the open by nightfall.
He was efficient. That was the danger. Men like Keller did not hesitate. They did not doubt. They enforced. And enforcement, in a dying regime, was lethal.
My identification papers were perfect. Civilian logistics analyst. Temporary assignment. Clearance granted through channels already compromised by Allied intelligence months ago. I had been inside German command structures long enough to understand their greatest weakness. They trusted documents more than people. And people more than reality.
Her first encounter with Keller had been unremarkable. A routine inspection. A signature. A nod. The kind of moment neither of them had catalogued as important. They would both regret that mistake.
Your papers. And your assignment summary.
Of course, Colonel.
Her voice did not shake. It never did. Fear was a currency she had already spent elsewhere.
As he read, I watched his hands. They were steady. Clean. The hands of a man who still believed control was possible. Behind him, the radio crackled with fragments of truth. Cities falling. Rail lines destroyed. Entire divisions vanishing between one report and the next. He ignored it all.
You'll remain under observation. These are unstable conditions.
I understand.
He believed instability could be managed. She knew it could only be exploited.
That night, I accessed the restricted archives. The room was underground. Reinforced. Guarded by men who still saluted the flag as if it meant something eternal. The files inside told a different story. Fuel reserves depleted beyond recovery. Reserves non-existent. Orders issued that contradicted each other because command no longer understood the battlefield. The war was not just lost. It was already over.
She copied the documents by memory. No paper. No ink. Just facts carried in a mind trained never to forget what could get others killed.
When I left the archive, Keller was waiting in the corridor. Not angry. Curious.
You work late.
The war doesn't keep office hours.
Something shifted then. A fraction. He looked at her not as a name on a document, but as a person standing inside a reality his reports did not reflect.
Be careful. Uncertainty breeds mistakes.
Yes, Colonel.
That night, an encoded transmission left the building. By morning, Allied artillery adjusted its range. And Colonel Keller received an order marked, "Internal breach confirmed." His responsibility. His command. And somewhere within it, the woman who already knew the war was lost. The order did not come with explanations. It never did. Internal breach confirmed. Authority granted for extraordinary measures. Extraordinary was a word the Reich used when it meant blood.
From this moment forward, all communications are monitored. No exceptions. Anyone obstructing this investigation will be treated as complicit.
Keller's voice carried across the briefing room like steel dragged across stone. No anger. No doubt. Only responsibility. Men trusted him because he never raised his voice. Because he believed that calm authority was stronger than fear. He was wrong. Fear had already won.
I sat among clerks and junior officers, my posture identical to theirs. Eyes forward. Breathing measured. Inside, I counted exits. Patrol rotations. Who avoided whose gaze? Panic always left a pattern. So did loyalty.
Keller began the interrogations personally. Not because he enjoyed them. Because he believed leadership meant proximity to guilt.
You were on night duty 3 days ago. Where were you between 2200 and 0100?
Questions precise. Timing exact. No theatrics. That was what made him dangerous.
When my turn came, he dismissed the guards. That alone was a breach of protocol.
Sit.
Yes, Colonel.
The office was small. Soundproofed. Maps covered the walls. Old ones. Borders that no longer existed except in memory and ink. Keller stood too close. Not threatening. Observing.
Your access level exceeds what your assignment requires. Explain.
Emergency Logistics Authorization. Issued after the rail sabotage last month.
He checked the document. It was real. That was the cruelest part of intelligence work. Truth, fabricated so carefully it could pass any test.
You understand the consequences of deception during wartime.
I do.
Their eyes held for a second too long. In that silence, something dangerous formed. Not trust. Recognition.
I could tell he was tired. Not physically. Morally. Every arrest carved something out of him. Every order pulled him further from the idea of honor he was still trying to serve.
Outside the office, 2 soldiers were dragged down the corridor. Saboteurs. Or cowards. Or simply men who had stopped believing. Keller did not look. That restraint cost him more than any scream.
You should request transfer. This place is becoming corrosive.
Is that an order?
No.
That single word crossed a line neither of them named. Not yet.
That night, I transmitted again. A final confirmation. Command structures here were hollow. One decisive strike would collapse the region's defenses within days. The cost would be human. It always was.
At dawn, Keller received a sealed intelligence summary. It listed 3 suspects. One was already dead. One would confess under pressure. The third was still walking freely through his headquarters. Her name was underlined in red. The folder was thinner than Keller expected. Thin files were the most dangerous. They meant conclusions had already been drawn.
Close the door.
The bolt slid into place with a sound too final for an office. Keller did not sit. He read the report standing, as if refusing to let his body accept what his eyes already had. Intercepted transmission timing. Archive access logs. Witness statements extracted under pressure he preferred not to imagine. All arrows pointed inward. Toward his command. Toward her.
Impossible.
Keller had been trained to recognize sabotage. He had never been trained to recognize betrayal that wore calm eyes and spoke the truth only when it was safe.
The evacuation order came too early. That was how I knew they were close. Intelligence rarely panicked. When it did, it meant someone had finally started asking the right questions.
She burned her remaining notes. Memory was all she had left now. And time. Very little time.
I was halfway to the motor pool when Keller's adjutant stopped me. No explanation. Just an escort. That was when I understood this would end in a room without windows.
Keller dismissed the guards again. That second breach was not protocol. It was a choice.
Sit down.
If this is an interrogation, Colonel, I'm entitled to.
This is not official.
Silence settled between them. Heavy. Unforgiving.
Tell me the truth. Not the version meant for files. The real one.
You wouldn't believe me.
Try.
The war is over. Not tomorrow. Not in speeches. It's over because your supply lines don't exist anymore. Because your reserves are numbers copied forward to avoid panic. Because your orders contradict reality. I've seen the reports you never receive.
Each sentence struck him harder than artillery. Facts were more destructive than bombs.
You expect me to believe enemy propaganda?
No. I expect you to recognize numbers.
He turned away. Maps stared back at him, accusing in their obsolescence.
They will execute you for failing to stop me. And they will execute me whether you help or not.
My duty is clear.
Is it?
The sirens returned. This time, not internal. Artillery. Closer than before. Keller reached for the telephone. One call could end her life. One delay could end his career. He hesitated. And in that hesitation, the war finally reached them both. The city trembled beneath artillery fire. Smoke blurred the horizon. Sirens screamed, mingling with distant cries. Inside the command bunker, Keller faced a choice he had trained against his entire life.
Orders, my duty. I cannot.
Then do not. Do what you must, not what you are told. It is the only way to survive yourself.
Every officer in the room waited. Even the soldiers outside felt it. The weight of loyalty pressed down, heavier than any bombardment.
Release her. All measures. Now.
Guards hesitated. Keller's hand hovered over the map, trembling. He realized honor could not save him. It had never saved anyone.
I walked past him. No touch. No glance. Only the knowledge that survival came at the price of absolution, not innocence.
The transmission went through. Allied forces would advance faster than expected. The region's command structure would crumble within hours. Every move Keller had made now served a new authority.
I've followed orders for years. And it brings me here. Alone.
The first explosions reached the outskirts. Smoke choked corridors and offices alike. Keller stood still. A monument to the futility of obedience.
Outside, I could see the horizon open. The war ended not in speeches, nor in surrender flags. It ended in empty offices, abandoned posts, and choices made too late.
Keller was arrested for disobeying orders. A court-martial that would never convene. The collapsing military had no time for discipline, only survival.
Amr. I gave it everything. And it was not enough.
She survived. The war ended. Victory carried a cost no metal could measure. Keller's face haunted her memory, not because of love, not because of hate, but because he had tried to serve honor in a world that no longer allowed it.
I carried the knowledge of survival, the weight of choices, and the echoes of a man who could not surrender his morality, even as everything fell apart.
The city was silent after the shelling. Duty had ended. Love had ended. Only the ruin remained, quiet and patient, waiting for history to record it as nothing more than strategy and casualty numbers.